We're living now very troubled times, especially us Romanians who are here near the war. Can you tell us what is the stake of this conflict?
Yeah, I think this is a conflict really for the future of humanity as a whole, for the future of freedom and democracy. If aggression and tyranny are allowed to win, it will open a new dark age for the whole of humanity. And you know, it's not some high words and poetry. You should look first of all at the budgets, at the money. Today, or before the war, the average defense budget in Europe was just 3%. Just 3% of the budget went to defense, which is amazing because most of history, you know, kings and emperors, they spent 50%, 60% on their armies. And this is what enabled countries to build healthcare systems, education systems. Now with this war, overnight defense budgets are doubling and tripling. The money that should go to teachers, to social workers, to doctors is now going to tanks. In addition, our chance of dealing with climate change, our chance of regulating artificial intelligence is also evaporating because the money and the attention that is needed to deal with these global problems will instead go to fight wars. There is a danger that leaders, autocrats all over the world, if Putin succeeds, lots of other autocrats around the world will think, hey, you can do that now. You can just invade countries and conquer them. And we'll see more and more of these things. And finally, we have nuclear weapons. You know, until a week ago, 2 weeks ago, people thought, oh, nuclear weapons, this is something for the 1960s or 1970s. But no, it's here, it's now. So really what is at stake is the very survival of the human species.
We can see now the Ukrainians fighting for their independence and for their country. How will it change the configuration of the world after this war?
Well, I can't predict the future. The future is not written yet. It depends on what people do, on what we decide to do in the coming days and weeks and months. And the Ukrainians, you know, they are fighting so courageously. They are giving courage to the whole world. You see that suddenly Europe is doing things that it didn't imagine that it would do. You see countries like Finland and Sweden and Germany sending arms to the Ukrainians. You see oil companies pulling out of Russia. I think that the Ukrainians, their bravery actually gives courage to the whole world. And it should give courage to each and every one of us to do something. Everybody can do something. Okay, you're not a leader of a country, but you have an old coat, you can donate it for charity. You have an internet connection, you can join the struggle online, the struggle for public opinion. There are refugees coming in, you can welcome them. If the government is considering to make sanctions, very often governments want to impose sanctions, but they are afraid that it will harm the local economy and then citizens will get upset and they will lose the elections. So citizens should raise their voice and tell the government, yes, we know it will be difficult, but we are willing to take these difficulties because we understand what is at stake. And if you don't act courageously, if you don't stop this, we will not vote for you. So even as an individual citizen, there is a lot that you can do.
I know from our previous interview that you are a little bit Ukrainian. You have some ancestors from there.
Yes.
What do you feel? What do you feel when you see the destruction over there?
My grandfather came from Chernovich, not Chernobyl, Chernovich, which is actually close to the Romanian border. And but it's not a family thing. You know, it's a human thing. You see the scenes on the one hand of destruction and of misery and hundreds of thousands of people fleeing their homes, and on the other hand of a people fighting for its existence so courageously, and it's just so moving. And this is why I think that it could also change the world for the better. Because it should make people realize, you know, in the West we had all these internal cultural wars over the last few years between left and right and liberals and conservatives. And this war in Ukraine should be the opportunity to end the culture war in the West. Because left and right and liberals and conservatives realize there is a much, much bigger danger which we should unite against. You know, I was moving between watching CNN and Fox News, and suddenly they show the same things. They find something common they can unite against. And if the West unites, if Europe unites, there is nobody that it should fear, because it's much bigger and stronger. You know, Russia is not the Soviet Union. It's much, much weaker. It's not even one of the 10 largest economies in the world. The Russian economy is smaller than the Italian economy, than the South Korean economy. The Russian economy is about $1.6 trillion a year. The European economy is $22 or $23 trillion. Europe is much stronger as long as it is united. And maybe most importantly, is if in addition to everything else, Europe and the West now embark on a green Manhattan Project. Like in the Second World War, when there was this Manhattan Project to produce nuclear weapons, now we need an ecological Manhattan Project, because Russia is actually a gas station with nukes. The whole Putin regime is built on oil and gas. That's it. And if oil prices will go down to, say, $20 a barrel, this is the end of the Putin regime. So the West needs to unite and act fast and pour money and resources and scientific knowledge to create an energy revolution, to stop depending on oil and gas, and then the Putin regime is finished.
That's why you said that Putin already lost. As a historian, what do you mean exactly by that?
I mean that, you know, Putin certainly has the military power to conquer much of Ukraine, maybe the whole of Ukraine, with terrible destruction. He has no limits. He doesn't care about the suffering he's causing. However, we need to understand what this war is really about. It's not about the security concerns of Russia. This war is about the very existence of the Ukrainian nation. Putin has built this lie in his head that he believes that there is no Ukrainian nation, that Ukrainians are just Russians, they want to be absorbed into Russia, and it's only a tiny gang at the top, which he calls Nazis, even though there are Jews there, he calls them Nazis, only they prevent it. So he imagined that he just needs to invade Ukraine, and within 24 hours, Zelensky will flee, the Ukrainian army will surrender, and the population will throw flowers on the Russian tanks. And he was completely wrong about everything. Ukraine is a very real and courageous nation. Zelensky didn't flee. The Ukrainian army is fighting like hell. And the Ukrainian people are not throwing flowers on the Russian tanks. They are throwing Molotov cocktails. And, you know, he can still conquer much of the country, but to win, to achieve his aim, he would need to hold the land and absorb it into Russia. And he won't be able to do it because the Ukrainians won't let him. Every day that passes, he's creating more and more hatred between Ukrainians and Russians. Ukrainians and Russians were like family. They didn't hate each other. But now with his very hands, he creates this hatred that if it doesn't stop the war, it will be hatred for generations, which will guarantee that there is no chance that Ukrainians will ever agree to be absorbed into Russia.
So basically, the Tsar Putin is wrong, and the Soviet Empire can no longer be a reality.
No, because again, before the war began, nobody could tell for sure. There are many things we knew before the war began, We knew that the Russian army is much stronger. We knew that NATO would not send forces to intervene. We knew the power of Russian oil and Russian gas. But there was one thing that nobody could be certain about. What would be the Ukrainian reaction? The entire war plan of the Russians was based on the gamble that the Ukrainians would just surrender, that something similar to what happened in Crimea in 2014 will happen. The population will just accept it. And we already know within a week that this gamble completely failed. The Ukrainians are fighting so bravely, they are resisting. There is no way that this plan that Putin had can materialize. The only question is left, how long will it take the Russian leadership and Putin to understand their mistake? Unfortunately, it seems, like many times, the problem with dictatorship is that when nobody around the dictator is willing to confront him and to voice a different opinion. When he believes something, everybody around him says, yes, you are correct. And this is again what is happening. And this is why Putin feels that, okay, I need more force and it will finally succeed. And I hope that the Russian leadership around him and the Russian people will stop this. Will tell him, you are destroying us. You are creating hatred between the Ukrainian and Russian people. You are leading us and the whole world to disaster. I hope the Russian leadership and the Russian people will be inspired by the courage of the Ukrainians to also do something to stop the war. If the Ukrainians, can fight tanks with their bare hands, then there is also the possibility that the Russian people would stop the war.
And one last question. This is another tragedy for humanity after the pandemic. How can we deal with all the stress and all this fear? We are very close here in Romania and we see the refugees. We hear the bombs very near. How can we deal with these fears?
To understand that we have the responsibility and the ability to act and to deal with it if we stay united. As long as Europe stays united, it is still the strongest power on earth. Russia, I said that the economy of Russia is $1.6 trillion. The economy of Europe is about between $20 and $25 trillion. And the US is another $20 trillion. If they stay united, they needn't fear anyone. They are stronger than anyone else. They can accomplish whatever they set themselves as a goal. And again, as I said, one very important goal is an ecological Manhattan Project. If oil goes down to $20 a barrel, which is completely feasible, the Putin regime is over. And as individuals, of course, maybe as an individual, I can't do it myself, so organize with other people and donate to the refugees. Tell the government how you feel about it. If you are afraid, don't just sit at home and feel helpless. Act. You have the power to do something.
And as a last curiosity, Putin uses a lot of historical arguments to say that this is the reason why he invades Ukraine. What do you believe about that?
I don't agree. The people talk about the security concerns of Russia. It's like, you have somebody who is stepping with his boot on the face of another person and tells us, oh, please understand my security concerns. No, that's not a situation that you can emphasize with it. There was no immediate threat to Russia. Russia may have legitimate security concerns, that's true. But there is a way to deal with them. And invading Ukraine and trying to destroy it is not the way. There was no immediate threat to Russia. Nobody was discussing immediately kind of accepting Ukraine into NATO. It was not on the table. There was not a situation when the German army was massing on the borders, about to invade, and Russia had to do something quickly. There was no reason for this war to start except the fantasies, the ambitions of a single person. You know, there are wars in history which are really caused by, say, conflict between nations, by long-term processes. This is not the case. This war is the responsibility of a single person. It's Putin's war. It's not Russia's war. It's not the Russian people. It's not the Russian history. And you know, history is in the past. You cannot change it. But you can change the present. You can change the future. You don't have to repeat past mistakes. You know, the last time somebody invaded Russia was in the time of Hitler, more than 70 years ago. And since then, who invaded Russia? Who wants to invade it? Do you think that the Germans today want to invade Russia? Anybody who thinks the Germans want to invade Russia haven't been to Germany in recent years. They don't want to do it. Do you think the French, that Napoleon would come from his grave and lead the French army again to Moscow? This is crazy. The French don't want to invade Russia, so who wants to invade Russia?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the interview, and hope we'll see you again in less troubled times.
I hope so very much. I hope that peace will return soon and that this terrible catastrophe will end as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.